Welcome to this episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm Eric.
And I'm Angie.
We are married with a ton of kids.
We have 6 kids total. He has 3 and I have 3.
My name's Hallie and I love riding horses.
I'm Lexi and I love agriculture.
My name's Carter and I love eating.
My name's Chase and I love lifting weights.
My name's Summer and I love spending my parents' money.
I'm Dane and I love baseball.
Our show is about our blended, blessed, and always a mess life. And our hope is if you find yourself in the same situation we are in, that by sharing our story, all the fun and all the mess, the challenges we are experiencing, it will give you some inspirations, laughs, and community, knowing you are not alone in this mess.
We appreciate you spending time with us. Let's dive in.
This episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess is sponsored by the second book in HP's legacy children's book series called Are You With Me? It's a sequel to Feathers Matter, only this story is about being curious and brave by facing the thing you are most afraid of. And by doing that, you just might discover the love that others might have known all along. Curiosity over comfort zones all day long. Pre-order Are You With Me on our Blended, Blessed, Always a Mess website today. Books ship out in mid-December. Welcome to this week's episode of Blended, Blessed, and Always a Mess. I'm digging your hat, honey.
Hey, I'm back on the podcast.
It is sassy.
I do love this brand. Well, it looks a little dirty, but aloe is definitely all it.
When Summer B was helping me to order you something from there for Christmas, I was like, oh, wow.
Yeah.
Okay.
You don't want the truth.
Did you share that meme that I sent to you?
I did share it, and it's funny. I'm going to play it because it is hilarious.
I sent Angie a meme on Instagram, or a reel on Instagram yesterday, and somebody had basically sent a thing of the A Few Good Men clip.
Here, I'll play it. It's basically when my husband asks how much money I spent on Christmas gifts, and then it's this reel.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth. You can't handle the truth.
So true. It's like you really don't want to know.
I've stopped asking. She says, she's like, well, this is what I spent on the kids. And we're at a point where I don't even really believe her because like we just said, I mean, I had to say to my friend David a while back on a walk, he was like, well, on Paige's wedding, we stayed right on the budget where my wife said that we did. And I was like, did you see the budget? Like, did you see the credit card? He's like, no. And I was like, so you think you stayed on budget? He's like, oh my, like, it was like the light bulb went off. Like,
I do have a spreadsheet. I have to keep track of what I've purchased for the kids because I will forget and will go over. And I do have totals and I stay within that range. Yeah. But what gets you is everything else. The stuff with the games that we're going to do. It's the stocking stuffers. I don't keep track of all that little stuff. And then all the other gifts that we have to buy. So
it's a lot.
We're almost done.
We are glad to have Angie back on the podcast this week. Although if you didn't see us share this week, Josh Ryan's daughter, Brooklyn, got to ring the bell. She has finished her chemo treatments and has a great prognosis moving forward. Obviously, she has to get scanned all the time for the next couple of years, but she did get to ring the bell. So we are super excited for her.
I saw that video of her ringing the bell, and I could not be more proud of her fight, but also of you and Josh's podcast. So don't sell yourself short of people aren't going to listen. Because you're already then sounding like it's not going to be great. And
I know it's going to be good. I just think people aren't going to listen because you're not on it.
I listened to it and it was a great podcast. So good job.
Yeah. Again, I think about it. Like we've been through our own massive loss, but to have a child that's a teenager go through their high school years battling cancer, it's really traumatizing and devastating for a family. And it's a different kind of grief. So that's what that episode, if you haven't heard it, was about. And again, she got to ring the bell this week. And so super excited for Josh and Lauren and their daughter, Brooklyn. All right, honey, today, I like that we're doing this today in this weekend's episode because Christmas Eve, Christmas Day is just a few days away. And that was the most amazing birth in the history of births when Jesus was born of a virgin to Mary, with God as his father and basically Joseph as a bonus dad. And that leads us to you telling the story of what's quite possibly the second greatest birth in the
Oh boy.
history of
Now
no,
you're
no.
going to let the listeners down.
Okay.
That's what they're expecting. No,
I mean,
the twins turned 16 last week, and I had shared some pictures, and I mentioned that we did IVF, and I had several people reach out, go, "Oh my gosh, I didn't know you did IVF." And so it just got me thinking, like, I should walk through my whole pregnancy journey because it's quite the story. I was writing out the notes, and I'm like, I really think I just wrote a book for this podcast.
she worked on it for an hour while we drove. She typed for a solid hour.
Yeah, well, it started out, my very, very first pregnancy started out with devastation. And then I had a miscarriage at 10, 11 weeks. And I think we've talked about that on here, ended up having a D&C. And it was just this whole, like, your bubbles burst on what you thought was going to happen versus the reality, right? And that's life. Like, we all have these dreams of how something's going to turn out, and we're not in control. So pregnancy fits right underneath that same umbrella. It took a whole year before I got pregnant again. And that probably should have been a little bit of a light bulb that, maybe something was off. But it was funny, whenever I was pregnant with Hallie, it was a pretty easy pregnancy. And I guess I've always been this person that kind of wants to do things in private. And so whenever I was...
That's true. She does.
When I was due with Hallie, we kind of had it set up where I was going to get induced. And I went into the hospital and I didn't tell anybody. I didn't want my family to know that I was getting induced because I didn't want them all waiting in the waiting room like the whole day. I just wanted to be able to call them and say, "Hey, I had my baby, come see it." But I always share moms have an intuition. Well, my mom does too. And so I'm in the hospital, and they ended up that day being so busy. And because I wasn't like an emergency to be induced, it was kind of more of a convenient thing because my doctor was going out of town after that. They couldn't get to me. And so my mom, though, I hadn't really talked to my mom that much that day. And so she was like, "This is weird. I haven't heard from her, and I'm due." Right. So she ends up calling the hospital. Well, they can't give out information. She won't know if I was there. And it happened that one of our good friends was a nurse and working at the hospital, and she remembered that. And so she called her, like, "Is Angie there? Is she at the hospital?" And she's like, "I can't. What am I supposed to do?" She knew that we didn't want people to know. So anyway, she ended up telling her. I ended up telling my mom. And I'm like, "It's false alarm anyway. I'm not even going to have the baby because we're getting sent home." So my doctor called me that night and was like, "Listen, I know you're disappointed, but you're not going to get the treatment today that you deserve. And so going in tomorrow, it's not going to be as busy, and you're going to get the treatment that you deserve." So I was disappointed he was going out of town. Well, we ended up being that the person that was on call that delivered Hallie was the same doctor I had when I had my D&C. And so it was kind of like this full circle moment. And so we delivered Hallie, and everything went smoothly. It was a natural birth, all the things. And I was kind of like one and done. I came from a big family. I only wanted one child because I could give her all the love that she deserved and attention and all of that stuff. And I just, for years, was like, I only want one kid, just one. So fast forward, Hallie's about 4 or 5 years old, and Hallie starts praying for a brother and a sister. And we're always like, "Don't you mean or?" "No, I want a brother and a sister," every night. Like,
so it was like a bedtime prayer.
Yeah, bedtime prayer. And it was just something that she just got hung up on and was adamant about. And so probably around 5 years old, it was like, okay, maybe I'll consider and be more open to having another child. So we tried for a year. And that's where I started to get concerned of like, okay, it took a year to get pregnant with Hallie after a miscarriage. Now we're on another year. And so we decided I decided because, that's just how I roll. We should probably get checked out. So went to fertility specialist in Columbia, Missouri, and started like doing the normal kind of, let's check this out. Had like a surgical procedure to check for endometriosis, like nothing, could never find anything wrong. So we did Clomid, and like that worked perfectly to produce eggs to give you more of a chance. It's risky with that because you could have that's where people get pregnant with like sextuplets or whatever.
Oh gosh.
Because you produce so many eggs and you can't control it. So we did that for a little bit. Everything looked great. I mean, there were so many times I was at the doctor and they would take pictures and it's sonogram, like ultrasound pictures, and be like, oh my God, everything looks so perfect. This is textbook material. Like, I bet I heard that 3 different times, which is so frustrating because it's like, well, what is happening if everything's great? Anyway, so after we did as much as we could with me, then we decided at that time, we should probably check out my spouse and Hallie's dad and like, okay, what is that? What's going on there? So that's when we discovered that there was like only 2% of those little swimmers were good ones. So obviously reduces your chances of getting pregnant way down. So then you're kind of like, well, damn, Hallie was a miracle that we even were able to have her. So after discovering that, we're a year or 2 in to this whole process, and we end up taking a break from it because basically your next step was IVF. Well, IVF is expensive and it's hard to go through. A lot of emotions, a lot of procedures for me. And so we kind of took a break, and there is a lot of opinions around IVF, if you should do it or shouldn't do it. And I'll call my mom out on here, even though my mom listens to the podcast every week. She's a big advocate and supporter. I totally respected my mom's thought process around IVF. And when I had thrown that idea out there, she was against it based on like her religious beliefs, which again, totally respect that. And I took that into consideration because the thought process behind the religious beliefs and concerns that you fertilize more eggs, so you have more embryos than what you would use. And so then you cryopreserve those. So anyway, I thought through it, weighed on it. We took a break from it. And then it was kind of like, no, like I had this like pull towards doing IVF. My daughter is praying for a brother and a sister, and I just could not let it go. And so in normal Angie fashion, I just didn't tell anybody. I didn't want to put my mom in a situation where she knew what was going on and felt like she had to, address it or try to talk me out of it. And it was just like, you know what, I'm just going to go inward and just going to do it without people involved. Because then it's like when I had the miscarriage the very first time, it's like you tell everybody you're pregnant and then you have to tell everybody you're not. It's kind of like a similar thing. Like you don't have to navigate a lot of people asking for updates. How's everything going? So I just did it all on my own. And it's like a 2 or 3 month process. And, there's definitely some laughs throughout because you have to take shots to produce a lot of eggs. Mm-hmm. Well, my husband had to give me the shots, and he's got a very weak stomach. And it's like, I remember one night, you give it in your butt, basically, your lower waist kind of.
In your backside.
In your backside. And he's like nervous holding the shot thing. I'm like, what? Get it together. You're not even the one getting the shot. I am. So figure it out and give me the shots. Anyway, it's crazy what you end up going through. But we got through that. They do the extraction, surgical procedure. They put you out for it. And then, they grow them in a Peachtree dish, basically. I mean, I'm sure that's not the scientific terms, but Hallie would always tell the twins that, like, you were grown in a Peachtree dish. And so...
Isn't it like a Petri instead of a peach tree?
Petri, yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't say that right.
I mean, it's like I like peaches, but yeah. Petri dish. It's been a long time since I've had biology and chemistry. Totally. I get it. Hallie used to tell him that. I remember.
Yes. So then, like, it's the day to like put them back inside of you. You know, they're fertilized, they're growing, everything looks great. And I remember, you know, you have to sign a piece of paper basically saying, do you want to transfer 1 or 2? And like, I just immediately selected 2 and signed it. And then I looked over at my husband and was like, oh, do you want to do 1 or 2? Like, I just never even ask. It's like,
I would just
2.
say, as Angie's husband now, this doesn't surprise me at all. Again, you think about it. She bought a house in Florida and I wasn't even with her. She's like, you good if I buy this house in Florida? Yeah, I guess that's my option. So I'm not even a little surprised that you just decided 2 on your own. That
I did ask them just to reassure.
Checks out. It checks out.
Yeah. Yeah. It's consistent. So transferred 2, I mean, so many shots, so many surgical procedures, blood work, all the things. I don't even know how many appointments that we had. And then whenever they put the embryos back inside of you, then you're on bed rest for 3 days. Well, this time I'm living in St. Elizabeth, which is where my parents live. And so, you know, I've talked to my mom all the time. She knew what we had going on. So she recognized that I wasn't going to work. So I just told her that I was like not feeling good, that I'm sick. Well, again, mother's intuition. She's like, something's off. She actually thought like I had had a miscarriage. And that's why I was at home. So she comes up to my house and like brings me soup, thinking that she would walk into my house and I would be a mess. And so then I just sat her down and I said, well, I did IVF. And I told her. And, you know, I think sometimes you have to protect people. And in my mind, I was protecting her from what I was going to do, knowing that it would be hard for her to accept until it was done. Then it was like, well, it's too late to say anything.
Ask forgiveness later.
Yeah, that's right. That's right. But like now you look at life and you think there's no way it would have been the life that it was without the twins, without going through IVF, without picking 2 embryos to transfer. And if I firmly believe in something with such strong conviction, I do it anyway. I mean, it's like feathers matter, right? You fly anyway. You're missing feathers and feel weak, you fly anyway. It's the same with Are You With Me, the second children's book. You're scared? Ride the horse anyway. Do it anyway. But I think you have to fundamentally know how strong a conviction you have for. I just had this conversation with Summer that's a whole nother podcast. But it's like, as you get older, you are going to have to learn your internal thought process and really know what you firmly believe in, because you will have to go against people. To stand for something, you will go against people that don't believe in that. But back to the birth story, Hallie always had an intuition about her. And this part of it is kind of unbelievable because when I found out I was pregnant with twins, so they do blood work and my numbers were way higher than they should be. So it's like, we're pretty sure you're pregnant with twins. And then they ended up, you know, confirming it shortly after. Hallie's like, it's a boy and a girl. I mean, she knew it was a boy and a girl. There was no challenging that. She was adamant that it was a boy and a girl. And then she took it a step further and said that the girl's on top and the boy's on bottom. So when it was time to find out what we were having, we go in there and it is exactly what she said it was going to be. A boy and a girl, and the girl's on top and the boy's on bottom. And they never changed positions, ever. The entire time they were in the exact same position.
It really hasn't changed because Summer is still rule. She's the ruler.
Oh my God.
And it's still the same.
It's the exact same. Exact same. Everything's humming along, except at about 27 weeks, I go to my specialist appointment. So I have a regular doctor, but I also have a specialist because if you do IVF, all the things, like there's risk there. And they're always monitoring you each appointment. And I will never forget being in this recliner, them monitoring me and saying, "Are you having contractions?" And I'm like, "No, I don't feel anything." And they're like, well, we probably should check you a little bit further. And I was having contractions, and it was kind of like, and you're done. You're done. You're on bed rest. And that was at 27 weeks. And bed rest wasn't like lay low. Bed rest was you can get up to shower, to use the bathroom, and eat. Well, at that time, we lived in a house that all the bedrooms were upstairs. But everything else happened downstairs on the main level. So I would come downstairs in the morning, and I would be on that couch the whole day so I could see Hallie coming from school, but I couldn't help her get ready. I couldn't do any of that. And I never pushed it because I was always like, I want to do the best for these kids. And so I literally was on bed rest for 2 months because this was like August timeframe.
Yeah.
First part of September. So my birthday was bed rest. Halloween, when Hallie went trick-or-treating, bed rest, stuck at home. And then it was 2 months of that. And
so now you're at what, like 34-ish weeks?
Yeah.
Something like that?
No, that's not right. Because I had them at 36 weeks and I was a month in the hospital.
So 32 weeks you would have went into the hospital.
Yeah, around 32 weeks. It was around November timeframe. I remember my husband, it was deer season, and that's a big deal. And he couldn't decide if he should go hunting or not. And I'm just like, yeah, go hunting. It'll be fine. And then I was like, something doesn't quite feel right. And so I ended up having him come back, and we took Hallie to my mom's, dropped her off, and then we drove to Columbia. Because the problem was we were an hour away from a hospital. So we drove to the hospital, and, right away they're going to put an IV in. Again, Mr. Weak Stomach, he gets hot. And this nurse was so damn funny. She was like, do you want me to get you a cold washcloth? And he's like, yeah. She's like, well, you are such a delicate little flower. And I ended up having this lady as a nurse off and on while I was in the hospital. And she was so funny. So funny. But it's like, you've earned to stay in the hospital because I lived an hour away. And you handle things, right? You just do it. And like looking back, I think, God, I don't even know. I don't remember being super scared. I just remember like, all right, this is what we're doing. This is the next thing that we're supposed to do. All because you also knew that you were going to get something out of it, right? You were going to get two beautiful babies, and they were going to be healthy. So like in that lens, you could plow through anything. Losing a child though, like you compare it to that, and it's like, you don't get anything out of this. Like there's nothing waiting for you right now. If you plow through the suck of the next 2 months, you're going to get this. There's nothing there. So, at this point I'm in the hospital and I'm by myself. And
for 30 days.
For 30 days, every week they would take me to my specialist appointment because I still went to the specialist. Only this time I'm at the hospital connected to the doctor's office, which is across the highway. So this lady would get me out of my bed, and I would get in this wheelchair, and she would wheel me across the hospital, across the little pedestrian bridge over the highway to my appointment. And the one time she was wheeling me back, they stopped me at the front desk, and they're like, you have a roommate now. I'm like, what the F? Are you kidding me? Like, I just want to be by myself in my room, watch my own TV in the quiet, and feel sorry for myself.
I was going to ask you, like, were you, knowing how much you like to go, were you pleasant to be around during this time?
I think so. But like, I had a laptop. Like, we didn't have great phones 16 years ago.
Yeah, for sure.
So I don't really have like a lot of videos and stuff. I have a few pictures, but I had a laptop and I did all my Christmas shopping. Now I probably overspent that year because I was bored out of my mind.
Yeah.
And I couldn't work.
Sense. That tracks.
When I was at home on bed rest for 2 months, I could work. So it like helped the time go by. I was just remote. But once you're in the hospital, they don't want you to work in the hospital. It's weird. It's weird. So anyway, they wheeled
How's your roommate? Tell me about this roommate.
I couldn't even tell you what she looked like. They wheeled me past her because my bed was by the window. And I didn't even like look at her because she was losing her shit. She's bawling her eyes out. But there was a curtain between us. So I'm like, just get me to my other side. And we had one TV that we had to share. Anyway, so I get in the room. I'm like listening to her cry over there when her family's all around her. And she doesn't like have very many. I think she had like a week to go of her pregnancy. And I'm thinking, woman, I have been on bed rest this is my 3rd month and I don't have anybody around me. I have a kid at home that I'm not seeing. Anyway, so I'm like, okay, I'm trying to find my bearings. Oh my God, I missed such an important part of this story. I got to go back. Let me go back. When I was at home on bed rest, at some point on my bed rest journey at home, my mom walks in the house and she's carrying this massive thing wrapped up in a blanket. And I'm thinking, did she think this is going to go south and she kidnapped a child for me? A small child she's carrying into my home? Like, what is this? So I'll pause there too, because I am a very aesthetic pleasing home decor type of person. I'm a minimalist. I don't like a lot of stuff. I don't like a lot of color. I'm black and white type of person.
I mean, people can see that by your outfit if they're looking at YouTube.
Right.
They can see by the decorations behind you. Like, very black and white, very simple. She's been that since before I met her, but she was very clear about that when we met.
Not a lot of color.
Or clutter, for that matter.
Yes. And I also don't have a lot of religious items in my home. I prefer a one-on-one relationship with Jesus. I might have a simple cross or something like that, but I don't have a lot of religious items in my house. And then my mom unveils what she brought to me, and it is this massive statue of Lady Guadalupe or something. So she's very colorful and she's very big. But at this point, I'm like, okay, I could
Would you say 3 feet high, 5 feet high? What are you thinking?
I'll meet you in the middle, about 4 feet high.
Okay. All right. Sounds like your cup of tea.
Maybe
for sure.
3.5, 4. At this point, though, I'm like, okay, I could probably use some extra help. I have this lady now staring at me because she was on right in front of the fireplace in our living room. She became part of the conversation. Oh, where did you get the statue? Oh, my mom brought it to me. I would talk to her. Sometimes I would get bored, help me out here type of thing. Okay, now let's go fast track. Now I'm in the hospital and I'm very much annoyed by this roommate that I have. And my mom comes around the corner carrying something wrapped in a big blanket. And I'm like, oh God, this
day's getting better.
It's not good timing on her part. And she had no idea what she was walking into. She didn't know I had a roommate. She didn't know I was upset, frustrated. And then she brings in this massive statue from my house. She carried it through the hospital wrapped up. They had to wonder, what is this woman carrying? I'm surprised
they let her.
Security?
Yeah, where's security?
I'm surprised they let her, but this was 16 years ago. Right now, they probably would have checked her. And she carries it in and puts it in the window, and statue is standing in my window, and I could not even talk. I don't even know if I said 5 words to my poor mom, except I might have said, you couldn't have found a smaller statue. Why did you bring
Can I
it?
ask a question?
Sure.
I've heard about this statue since we met. Do we know where the statue is now?
Well, she was so effective because my twins were born healthy that she then started making her way to other families that were in need. So she started getting passed around. I don't know where she's at now, but some
listener is going to let us know where this
statue is. Yes. And then
Alice, don't even think about bringing one to Hallie's house in Florida.
No.
Don't bring us a statue. No. We love you. Don't bring us a statue. All right. Sorry.
At least at this point, my roommate did stop crying, but I don't know if it was because she was freaked out of what walked past her or what, but she stopped crying. And I think she was only my roommate for a couple days and then she was gone. Maybe she had her baby and I don't know. But my husband at the time came that night. Also bad timing for him because I'm like, you got to take this statue with you. My mom carried it in. You were going to have to carry it out. It's a spectacle at this point because nurses are walking by oh, I heard about your statue. Let me see it. I'm like, you don't want to see this thing? You were at the front desk going, oh my God, go look at this massive statue in our room. That's
Yes,
what
which
was
is
happening.
completely the opposite of who you are. You don't
Yes.
want that
Like,
attention to
I want
begin
people
with.
coming in my room wondering about my statue. Oh, it's funny now. At that moment, that night, it was not very funny, but
Well, good for Lance to take it
miserable.
home.
It was.
Yeah.
It was probably like that pregnancy was so painful because I had no room for twins. Like I literally sat there with my fingers pushing Summer out of my rib cage because her head, she was pushed up in my rib cage, which just felt like knives. So literally for 3 months, that's how I would sit there and push her out of my rib cage. And I would beg those last 2 or 3 weeks, can you please induce me? Just please induce me. I was begging them at that point because it was so uncomfortable. I have a high pain tolerance, but like I could not take it. I remember telling the specialist doctor that I had, like, I don't think I'm meant to have twins. And he's like, nobody is meant to carry twins. Like you're not designed that way. So
I have seen the
suck it up.
photos, and you are all belly. I
Oh my
mean,
gosh.
the belly was just.
I ended up weighing less when I had the twins than I did before I got pregnant. Like that's how unhealthy it was. Like it sucked everything out of my body. My body was not able to do its job. But on December 10th, which was a Wednesday, which is normally the day my mom would take time out because she was off work and come up and spend time with me, they monitored me every morning at 5 a.m. Every day I was in there. They'd wake me up at 5 a.m. Why 5 a.m.? I don't know. I guess they're busy the rest of the day, and monitor me for like 45 minutes. And that morning they were like, okay, today's the day. Like, thank God. I called my mom and I'm like, it's time. And she's like, oh my God, I'm almost there. She was going to like surprise me and come up, and I didn't know it at the time. And then it was like the worst part of the whole thing was trying to get the IV in. So should have been like a red flag then too, that I was extremely dehydrated because like I didn't want to get up and go to the bathroom. I didn't sit there and drink a lot of water. No one talked about like how much water you're drinking or anything like that. She could not get the IV in. Tried multiple times on one arm. I mean, at this point I am sweating, like my heart rate's crazy. She tried on the other arm. I mean, I became good friends with her. So it had been a month I had spent time with this lady, and she's like, I'm so sorry. This is going to be the worst part. And she finally got it in, and it was horrible. That whole experience was horrible. But then when they did the spinal block, that was the most comfortable I had been in months when I was numb. Even, my ex-husband, but husband at the time was like, are you okay? He was worried about me when I was laying there. Like he thought I was like passing out. And I'm like, no, I'm actually relaxed. Like I feel so good right now. I'm just trying to soak it up. So they were born. Chase was born at 10-11. Summer was born at 10-12. Chase weighed 4 pounds, 9 ounces. Summer weighed 5'9". She had the cutest little round cheeks, and Chase looked like the wrinkly old man. Clearly Summer was like hogging all the food. Every time I went to like a doctor's appointment, they would monitor their movement. Chase never moved. Every time they had to, like, I called it zapping, and the doctor would get pissed off because he was like, that's not the right term. We don't zap him. It's like blah, blah, blah. I'm like, well, I can't remember that, but I remember zapping to get him to move. And then they could make sure that he was actually moving around. But like he was stuck there, and Summer was hogging all the food. Clearly she weighed a whole pound more than he did. It's crazy. But then it's time to be a mom. Like you come from surgery, laying down for 3 months, to having surgery, having a C-section, to like, now guess what? You're a mom. There's no rest for the wicked. You go right into that. What were you going to say?
And 2 babies, not 1
2
baby.
babies.
It's hard enough
2
to have
babies.
1 newborn. Now you got 2 newborns.
Yeah.
I can't fathom that.
No. And they were in the NIC unit because they were a month early. And that, they kind of prepared us for that. So while I was in the hospital, they did like a day where they kind of gave you a tour of everything to expect, which I was grateful for that, because like if you're thrown into that, which a lot of times people are because you don't have the time to really prepare, there's a lot. Like you weren't supposed to look at the other babies. You weren't supposed to take pictures because there were some that were so, so tiny. They're in the NIC unit for a reason. And there was just teeny tiny little like 1-pounders because they were all in this one room together. And then the worst part of the whole pregnancy happened. This is like TMI right here. But anytime you have surgery, what's the first thing they want you to do after you have surgery?
Go to the bathroom.
Go to the bathroom. Everything that had happened to me in the previous 3 months led to that not being a thing that was really possible. So bed rest causes constipation. The medicine I was on to prevent me going into labor causes constipation. Surgery causes constipation. I didn't drink enough water. And it's like once you have surgery and your body starts like trying to work again, it was like, oh, I need to go to the bathroom. Only it was like, I think the only way I can describe it was bricks, like a brick that was not going anywhere.
Hence the term, shit a brick.
Yeah. Yeah, only that wasn't happening. And I did not know what to do. Like I was literally stuck in the bathroom. I thought.
Were you still at the hospital?
Oh, yeah. I'd never left.
Okay.
I mean, it's right. It's probably the day after, maybe. And I remember saying, I need a doctor to come in here. Like, I have staples in my stomach and I am trying to go to the bath. Like, I'm going to tear something. It's not working, but my body's trying to make it work. It was horrible. I was bawling, stuck in the bathroom. A nurse comes in and she's like, listen, you will not mess up your staples. You'll have like hemorrhoids before you would ever do something with your staples. I'm like, okay, that's good to know. Then they like try to do a suppository or enema, I guess. That was the first thing that they were like, here you go, try this. I'm like, oh my God, what the hell am I supposed to do with this?
Yeah.
That was not very effective. And I'm pretty sure I didn't do it right. And then it was like, they wanted me to come to the NIC unit. It was like my time to go spend with the babies. And I'm like, I can't. They wanted me to pump. I'm like, I can't do anything. I'm like freaking out, stuck in this bathroom with nothing working. And then my favorite nurse, my little friend that couldn't do the IV, but took care of me for a month, came in and she's like, all right, well, we can do a suppository. I'll do one for you. And I'm like, oh my God, no. But it was like no other option. So, talk about humiliating, embarrassing, all of that. It was horrible. It was so painful.
It worked though.
Sort of. I mean, it was a little bit helpful. Okay, so then the crazy part happens where they're like, we need you to pump. So I may have told this story on here. It still blows my mind. So I pump and then they come in a little bit later like, do you have any colostrum? Do you have any milk or, what came out? I'm like, nothing came out. Like, I got nothing. And she's like, nothing. I'm like, no. And she's like, let me see the container. And I show it to her and she gets a syringe. I kid you not, it was 1 drop. And she sucked that up with a syringe and gave it to Chase. And that one thing fueled me to pump I pumped 5 times a day for a year. Because It was like, if that one little drop, I would have told you there was nothing in there. And she was like, let me see it. And got a little dropper, sucked it out and left and went and gave it to Chase. I'm like, oh my God, that is so insane.
Wow.
So insane.
That's cool.
So they were born on a Wednesday. On Sunday, they moved us to a regular room. We were out of a NIC unit and everybody went home. It was the weirdest thing. It was Sunday. Everybody goes back to work on Monday. And here I am in this room that now I'm staying with the babies. I'm responsible. They're in their little cribs. And it's kind of like, oh my God, I just had surgery on Wednesday.
Yeah, you're probably still in a lot of pain still.
Oh my God, barely get up and down. Everybody's gone. And then I start to feel like I have to go to the bathroom. And I started freaking out of like, oh my God, I worried about Chase because there was a couple times Chase stopped breathing. And preemies do that. And you have to like tickle them and then they'll like start breathing again. And I'm just like, oh my God, what if I'm in the bathroom for a while and he stops breathing or the baby starts crying, they need me. And I'm like in here stuck. And like I start bawling, losing my mind. And the nurse comes in and now I'm on a different floor and I have a completely different nurse.
Oh, so you don't even know this person. All right. Okay.
No. And it's a dude.
Oh, okay.
Nothing wrong with that, except I'm a freaking mess. And he's like, what's wrong? He was like trying to be very sweet about it. and I'm like, what am I going to tell him? I can't go to the bathroom. I mean, it's like, so I'm crying. I can't get the words out. I can't breathe. I'm like, can't catch my breath. And then I'm just like, F it. I'm just freaking telling him, this is what happened. I'm by myself, all this stuff. And he left, came back, had warm prune juice for me. It doesn't taste better warm. That does not help it at all. And he's like, what do you need? And so I end up calling my mom, and it was snowing, and they end up bringing my mom back to me. And so she stayed with me, and all was right in the world after that. And they stayed a few days later, and then we took them home, and now they're 16. And that's it. You want to know the summary of that whole story?
I would love to know.
Women are freaking badasses.
Yes, ma'am.
We're beasts. Because we can freaking do anything, overcome anything, grow amazing humans, get back up when we're knocked down, fight through any storm that comes our way. And our bodies are unbelievable, honestly. Honestly, like when you think you can't do something, you remember that you're a woman. And not you, but you know what I'm saying?
You. I'm not,
like you can do it. You can overcome anything.
I've heard you talk about the story off and on, and over the last 5.5 years we've been together. The one thing I really want to know, and I think maybe the listeners do too, is Hallie prayed for a brother and a sister. Well, what do you remember about when Hallie came in and met that brother and sister for the first time?
Oh my gosh, she loved them so much. I lost pictures when they were little. They were in a storage unit and a tornado hit them. So there's a lot of pictures like I don't have. I had them all in albums. So I'm always sad about that. But I remember her coming in, and I mean, they had tubes in their noses. You couldn't they were tiny. You couldn't hold them like you normally could. But I will never forget her seeing them for the first time and holding them. And she was such a great big sister. I mean, there was 7 years difference in age, and she looked out for them all the time, was such a great helper. She never got jealous of them. She was the baby for 7 years. She was never wired that way. It was always like her looking out for them. I mean, we have so many cute videos, though. I do have some where she just looked out for them, pushed them in strollers when they were little babies, like you would think it would be a baby doll, and it's like the kids. And she was amazing, and she loved them so much. And I look back and I think often, like, what if I wouldn't have plowed through and did the IVF? Like, what if I wouldn't have the twins? Why did Hallie pray for a brother and a sister? I mean, God's plans are more than we could ever imagine, and I cannot imagine life without them. As hard as it was, like, I honestly don't remember a lot of the first 5 years, because it's so crazy. You don't sleep, it's hard to go anywhere. So you stay home a lot, and they consume 2 babies at one time, consume so much time, but then it just flies by, and now they're 16. I think that's why I struggled so much leading up to their birthday. And I kept telling twins, I'm not going to see you as much. And I relied on them so much the last 2 years to keep me busy, to focus. Like, I was so grateful for them. And I know when kids get their license, there's this freedom to go. And I love that for them. But it was very scary for me to think about not having them, because I've had them for so long and they kept me going. But I will say that the week of their birthday, because I say all the time, I'm soul connected to them. And I can tell when something's bothering them. I can tell when they're stressed, whether they like it or not. I know all of that. But the reverse is true too, that when your kids feel joy, you feel that too. And I fed off of that the week of their birthday, because it was so exciting for them to get their license. They want that freedom. They want to drive, and they're ready for it. We laugh about it because when the kids got their permit, Chase is like the protector. And a lot of times you really don't know if he's protecting or not, just the way he delivers his protection. But he was always the backseat driver to Summer, like, oh my God, you're going too fast. Oh my God, watch out. Oh my God, what are you doing? You should go do this. Like, chirped for a year.
It was a lot.
Even at me, like, I somehow forgot how to drive at 47, and this 15-year-old knows how to drive. So any mamas out there with boys that know it all about driving, I feel you. But Summer's very studious. And so we ended up getting a couple of driving lessons for her. And the morning of their birthday, when they're going to take their driver's test, Chase had to be at school early for wrestling. And so Summer's like, I want to practice driving this route and parallel parking. I hadn't ridden with her since she had a couple of lessons. And I'm like, oh, damn, girl, you parked this car like a boss. Like, you were so ready. She drove so good. And we both laughed like, wow, what if you get better on your test than your brother who has mouthed you for a year? So she ends up going first. They didn't really pick. Chase checked in first, but then they called Summer first. So
what did he say to her? What did he say?
Oh, yeah. He said, good luck. I cut your brake lines. I mean, what in the hell?
Very protective. Very protective.
Yeah, so protective. So she leaves. I'm watching her on Live 360. There's a certain route she wanted. She didn't want the downtown route. She wanted the subdivision route, whatever. So she ended up getting that and came back and she got a 98. The only thing she got knocked on was she was a little bit slow to turn her blinker on. So then Chase goes and I'm dying laughing because I'm thinking there's no way he's going to beat you at 98 because he knows everything. And there's karma. I believe in karma, people. You guys should too. And so he gets the downtown route. He gets the lady that's, stricter, whatever. I'm just dying laughing. And you could see him come back and I could see her talking to him. And I'm like, oh God, he doesn't look like he's unsure. That's the look on his face. So anyway, then he comes in, he has a smile on his face. So I knew he passed, but he got a 95. And so I'm like, Summer, forever you have got a higher score than he did. Anyway, they are great drivers, and this has been my first week of not driving them anywhere. And that job, that era I was in for so long, that role I had to get them from point A to point B is gone, over, just like that. I'm grieving a little bit about that, but also like I sense a little bit of a relief. I have a little bit more time in my day, and then it's also just one day closer to Hallie. Like, okay, let's go.
I would just say a couple of things. One, Summer getting the 98 to Chase's 95. She was on top again, just like in your belly.
Yeah, that's right.
And then I did that day of their birthdays with them getting their licenses. You had so much joy. Like, you radiated a joy off of you that you haven't had in a while. And that was fun to see. I enjoyed seeing you have real moments of happiness and joy.
I enjoyed feeling it, by the way. It was a high I had that whole week because it was like, I just don't feel that often. Yeah. And you don't know if you're going to feel it that often, So I tried to soak up every second of that.
Yeah, it was great. And then just finally, you think back, you mentioned a few minutes ago about God's bigger story. And this has been such a hard 2 years. We definitely are walking in the valley, and a valley that would be even darker if you don't zoom out to the bigger story and Hallie praying for a brother and a sister. And I know people always say things about their kids. We all think our kids are special. At the same time, I can zoom out and see Hallie, my bonus daughter, as someone that really had special gifts that seem really connected to God in a lot of ways. I don't know that makes sense to people, but some of us have special kids in a lot of ways. She had some kind of connection cosmically, almost like spiritually, in a way that she knew. And I even feel like now that she's gone, she's able to connect with us in very spiritual ways that tell me that she's with Jesus and she has this special relationship with him.
I think when you look back after you lose someone, you see all different connection points or things that were set in motion by that person. And now you understand why. And her being so adamant to pray for a brother and a sister like that, and the knowings of some of the things that she had. Like, I even remember her saying one time, I don't think I'm going to live like a long life. And it's just like, there's just different things that have been said or things that she has done that now you look back. But in the moment of that, you never think about that. But I think we all have that ability. I do think, there will be things that will happen that are also connectors. We just don't even see it our brains just can't process that.
Well, as we get to Christmas this week, maybe some folks are traveling and listening to the podcast as they're headed somewhere for Christmas. What's one thing that you're grateful for this week, honey?
I'm grateful. Well, we're on this whole theme, just our kids. I'm grateful that we have the crew that keep us going. I planned a couple of fun things this week. Took the girls to dinner and with Carter's girlfriend. And, there's always someone missing. I would have normally, Hallie would have been there with us, but I enjoyed it. And there's just some other things we can talk about on next podcast or two, but just grateful for our kids.
Yeah. I am grateful for this journey. And I don't think I would ever have said that. I miss Hallie, right? I would not want this journey over Hallie, but now that we are in it, I am learning more and more to find things to be grateful. And it's that all of us, even our kids, are becoming stronger people, better people, in many ways having a deeper relationship with Christ. And I see a woman that, as you have said multiple times in this podcast today, can do anything. And I see you do that every day. And so as we try to find things to be grateful for this time of year, it's just that this valley is changing us. And I think it's changing us in a way that Hallie wants us to be changed, that Jesus wants us to be changed. And she's doing it. I believe that she has a part in it, that she wants us all to be with her in heaven. And that's what I'm seeing and sensing and feeling. So that's why I say that.
I do want to ask for a prayer, though, that this might be something selfish to pray for, but pray that my books would get delivered soon.
Yeah.
It's bothering me.
That's
it's like bumming me out because I thought they would be here by now and the tracking's not set up yet on them. And it is stressing me out because I know people ordered them for Christmas and I want to have them. I want to be able to ship them out. And anyway, I'm just bummed. So asking for some positive vibes and some prayers that I get them before Christmas so we can get them shipped out.
I'm with you. So we'll pray for that. And for anybody going through a hard, difficult Christmas, that may be illness. It may be the loss of a child or a loved one. It may be divorce. It could be anything. We're thinking about you and praying for you. And as my dad, who loved Christmas so much and always said to me, remember the reason for the season. And that is that Jesus came so that he could be with us on earth and deliver us from our sins ultimately on Easter. And so I hope that you're able to enjoy some time with your family and friends and know that the bigger story is, even if you're in pain this Christmas, it's that one day we do get to be with Jesus. And that's why he came here to be born on Christmas Day. We hope that you guys have a wonderful, wonderful Christmas. God bless.
Thank you for listening to Blended Blessed and Always a Mess. Follow us on Facebook, Instagram, and at blendedblessedalwaysamess.com.
Reach out to us on any of our social channels. We would love to hear from you. Have a great week.